Welcome to English Stories. Here, you'll improve your English by listening to real, clear stories, slowly told and easy to follow. In the city of Salzburg, Austria, a baby boy was born on a cold winter day in 1756. His name was Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. His family was small, but full of music. His father, Leopold, was a music teacher and composer. His mother, Anna Maria, was kind and caring. They already had a daughter, Nannelle, who also played music. From the start, the house was filled with the sound of instruments, singing, and laughter. Wolfgang, or Wolfie, as his family called him, showed something special even as a baby. When Nannelle practiced piano, little Wolfgang would sit nearby, watching and listening. He was too small to play, but he loved the sounds. He laughed when the music was happy. He cried when it was sad. It seemed like music spoke directly to his heart. Leopold noticed this. He was a strict but loving father, and he believed music was very important. He started teaching Nannelle early, and soon he began teaching Wolfgang too. Even before he could write letters or words, he learned to play small songs on the piano. He had a perfect ear. If someone played a note, he could name it. If he heard a song once, he could play it back. It was not normal. It was a gift. Wolfgang was only 4 years old when he started learning both piano and violin. He practiced every day. He didn't mind. To him, music was like a game. His fingers moved fast, and he smiled as he played. He did not need to be forced. He loved it. When other children played with toys, Wolfgang played with notes and sounds. Soon, he began to compose his own music. These were short pieces at first, only a few lines, but they were original. He put the notes together in ways that made sense, ways that made people stop and listen. Leopold wrote them down because Wolfgang was still too young to write them himself. People could not believe it. "He is only 5," they said. "How can a child write music?" Leopold was proud but also careful. He knew that young talent was rare. He wanted to help Wolfgang grow, but not push him too hard. So he gave him both love and lessons. Nannelle helped too. She and Wolfgang played music together and became close friends. As Wolfgang grew, he learned quickly. He read music like it was a language. He could hear whole songs in his head before playing them. Sometimes he would stop in the middle of dinner, run to the piano, and play a new idea. "I have to catch it before it goes away," he would say. By age 6, Mozart was ready to perform for others. He played for family friends, for rich people in Salzburg, and even for important guests. They were all amazed. His small hands flew over the keys. His eyes were full of joy. He made music that sounded far beyond his age. People clapped and laughed with surprise. Wolfgang smiled, but did not show off. He just loved to play. Soon, Leopold had a big idea. He wanted to take Wolfgang and Nannelle on a music tour. They would visit cities, meet kings and queens, and play in great houses. It would be hard work, but also a chance to share Mozart's gift with the world. Anna Maria, their mother, stayed at home. She worried, but she trusted Leopold to take care of them. Before leaving, Wolfgang composed a few more small works. Each one showed more skill, more feeling. His music was full of life. He wrote with joy, and he played with heart. People began to whisper his name. "This boy," they said, "may become the greatest musician we have ever seen." Wolfgang did not think about being famous. He thought about sound. He listened to the birds, the wind, and even the rain. "Music is everywhere," he told Nannerl. "We just have to hear it." His journey was just beginning. He had much to learn and much to share. But even now, as a young child, he was showing the world something new. He was showing that music could come from deep inside, even from someone who was not yet tall enough to reach the pedals of the piano. Vocabulary words for this part. Talent, a natural ability to do something well. Compose, to create or write music. Practice, to do something again and again to get better at it. Sentence structure focus. Even before he could play, he. Example, even before he could write, he could compose music.
The Mozart family packed their bags and began a long journey. Leopold wanted the world to see his children's great talent. He believed music should be shared, and Wolfgang was ready. They traveled by carriage across Europe, moving from one city to another. It was not easy. The roads were rough, and the weather was often cold and wet. But Wolfgang and his sister Nannerl were excited. Their first stop was Munich. There, Wolfgang played for a royal audience. He sat at the piano with confidence, even though he was only 6 years old. The people watched in silence as his fingers danced across the keys. When he finished, the room filled with applause. The royal family smiled. They were impressed by this small boy who played like a master. From Munich, they traveled to Vienna. The Emperor and Empress of Austria wanted to meet the boy wonder. Wolfgang performed in the royal palace, full of gold and beautiful lights. He played with skill and joy. Afterward, he jumped into the Empress's lap and kissed her. Everyone laughed. He was not only a great musician, but also a charming child. The family's journey continued. They went to Germany, France, Belgium, and the Netherlands. In each place, Wolfgang performed for royal families and large crowds. He played the piano, the violin, and even sang sometimes. He also listened carefully to other musicians. He loved to learn new styles and sounds. Music from different countries gave him new ideas. He began to compose more complex pieces. In London, they met Johann Christian Bach, the son of the famous composer Johann Sebastian Bach. Christian Bach became a friend and teacher to young Wolfgang. He showed him new ways to write music. Wolfgang listened, learned, and improved. He was like a sponge, soaking up everything around him. Life on the road was not always fun. The family often stayed in small rooms. Sometimes they had little food or money. They had to carry their clothes, instruments, and music everywhere. In some places, the people were kind. In others, they were not. And sometimes they got sick. In London, Wolfgang became very ill. For weeks, he could not get out of bed. Leopold worried for his son's life. But Wolfgang slowly got better. And once he could sit up, he asked for music paper. He continued to compose even when he was weak. His hands shook, but his mind was full of music. He wrote new pieces and planned concerts. He did not stop. He loved music too much. He wanted to share it with everyone. The tour lasted more than 3 years. Wolfgang and Nannerl had played for kings, queens, and crowds in many cities. They had traveled thousands of miles. People across Europe now knew the name Mozart. But the family was tired. They missed home. It was time to return to Salzburg. When they arrived home, Wolfgang was different. He had seen so much. He had learned from the best and had grown as a composer. He was still just a boy, but his music had become deeper and richer. He had also learned about life, about hard work, sickness, kindness, and strength. Back in Salzburg, Wolfgang continued to study. He wrote more music, practiced every day, and played with Nonell. Leopold helped him, but now Wolfgang's ideas were often his own. He began to write his first symphony, a large piece for an orchestra. Most children his age were playing games. Mozart was writing music for many instruments. His music surprised everyone. It had energy, beauty, and emotion. He was only 8 years old, but his music spoke with the voice of someone much older. People began to say, "This boy is not just talented, he is a genius." Still, not everyone understood him. Some people thought it was just a trick, or that his father did the work. Others said he would not stay great as he got older. But Mozart did not listen to them. He continued to work. He continued to grow. The world had seen his early light, but Wolfgang was just getting started.
Mozart was no longer a small boy, but he was still young. As a teenager, he became more serious about his music. He began to think about what kind of life he wanted. He knew he did not want to only perform for royal people. He wanted to write music that would be remembered. He wanted freedom, freedom to choose what music he created, and freedom to live as he liked. At age 13, Mozart was given a job at the court of Salzburg. He worked for the Prince Archbishop, writing music and playing at events. Many people would be happy to have such a job, but Mozart did not enjoy it. The court had many rules, and he had little control over what kind of music he could write. He was expected to obey orders and stay quiet. But Mozart had big ideas, and he wanted to try new things. So he began to travel again. His father went with him, and sometimes his mother or sister came too. They visited Italy, where Mozart studied opera. He watched shows, met singers, and talked to famous musicians. He even wrote his own operas and had them performed in big theaters. Italian audiences loved him. They shouted "Bravo!" and threw flowers on the stage. Mozart was proud, but he stayed focused. He knew there was still much to learn. In each city, Mozart listened carefully to new sounds. He studied old music and new styles. He took notes and asked questions. He improved his skills with every concert, every conversation, and every note he wrote. Sometimes he was praised. Sometimes people criticized him, but he still worked. He still believed in his path. Back in Salzburg, things were not easy. Mozart wanted to leave the court job. He felt the leaders there did not respect him, but his father wanted him to stay. They began to argue. Mozart loved his father, but he also wanted to make his own choices. He felt trapped between duty and dream. Finally, he made a decision. He left Salzburg and moved to a bigger city, Mannheim first, then Paris. In Paris, he hoped to find support and success, but things were hard. His music did not bring in much money, and worse, his mother became sick during the trip. She died while they were in Paris. Mozart was heartbroken. He wrote letters home, full of sadness. He blamed himself for bringing her on the journey. He returned to Salzburg with a heavy heart. He tried to work again for the court, but the same problems came back. He felt small and unimportant. His talent was not being used well. Finally, in his early 20s, he left Salzburg for good and moved to Vienna. There, he would try to live as a free musician. A risky move, but one he felt he had to make. In Vienna, Mozart began to teach music lessons to students. He also gave concerts in small halls and noble homes. At night, he wrote music. He worked on symphonies, piano pieces, and operas. He tried new ideas, mixed styles, and wrote from the heart. Vienna was full of musicians, so it was not easy. Some people admired Mozart. They said, "This man is a genius. His music is alive." But others did not like his style. They thought it was too emotional or too complex. Sometimes he earned good money. Other times he struggled to pay rent. But he never gave up. He believed in music. He believed it could change the world. He met other artists, thinkers, and performers. He also met a young woman named Constanza. They became friends, and later they married. Some people said she was not smart enough for him, but Mozart loved her. She sang well and supported his work. She also helped him manage his busy life. During these years, Mozart wrote some of his greatest pieces. His music became stronger, more personal. He was no longer just a child prodigy. He was a man, an artist, and a voice in the world of music. He wanted to show that music was not only for kings and queens, it was for everyone. He began to write operas that told real stories, not just about gods and heroes, but about people with problems, with love, with mistakes. One of his most famous operas from this time is The Marriage of Figaro. It was full of humor, but also full of truth. People laughed, but they also saw parts of their own lives in the characters. The opera was a success, and Mozart felt proud. He had taken a risk, and it had worked. Sometimes things went wrong. A new piece would fail, or someone would copy his work, but he still wrote. He still dreamed. Sometimes he was sad, but music gave him strength. Sometimes he was poor, but music gave him hope.
Mozart's new life in Vienna brought many changes. He was no longer under the control of the Salzburg court. He could now choose what music to write and when to perform. But with freedom came new challenges. He had to earn his living by teaching, performing, and selling his music. There was no regular salary. He was now a full-time composer and performer, and life was often uncertain. He worked harder than ever. He gave piano lessons to students during the day, and at night he wrote music. Sometimes he played concerts in noble homes, where he wore fine clothes and smiled for important guests. Other times he gave public concerts, renting the hall himself and hoping people would come. Sometimes the concerts were full, other times the seats were empty, but he kept trying. Even though he did not always find success, he wrote music that touched people's hearts. He wrote string quartets, piano sonatas, and concertos. He poured his feelings into every piece: joy, sadness, hope, and love. His music was full of life. He once said, "Neither a lofty degree of intelligence nor imagination, nor both together, go to the making of genius. Love, love, love. That is the soul of genius." Mozart and Constanza had children, but only 2 survived. This brought deep sadness into their lives. Still, Constanza supported Mozart in every way she could. She sang in his concerts and helped him manage his finances when times were hard. They were not rich, but they tried to live with joy and dignity. One of Mozart's greatest joys was writing operas. In Vienna, he composed Don Giovanni, a dark and powerful story about a man who lies and hurts others. The opera was bold and new. Some people loved it, others were shocked, but everyone agreed the music was amazing. He followed it with The Magic Flute, a fairy tale full of fun, mystery, and wisdom. It was written in German, not Italian, so ordinary people could understand it. The story was about truth, friendship, and the search for light. Mozart worked with a friend to write it quickly. They finished it just in time for the first show. The audience loved The Magic Flute. They clapped, laughed, and cried. Many came back to see it again. It was a big success, and Mozart felt proud. He had created something special, music that could reach everyone, not just the rich. Still, money remained a problem. Even though he was famous, he often had to borrow money. He sent letters asking friends for help. Sometimes he wore old clothes because he could not afford new ones. He had no servants, and sometimes no fire to warm the house in winter. Life was difficult, but he never stopped writing. Even though he faced many problems, he continued to create. Mozart also tried to be part of society. He joined the Freemasons, a group of thinkers and artists who believed in kindness and wisdom. They met to discuss ideas and support each other. Mozart wrote music for their meetings. He believed music should help people grow, not just entertain them. As he grew older, Mozart's health began to change. He became tired more easily. His face looked thin, and he sometimes had pain. But he did not slow down. He worked every day, even when he felt weak. Music gave him energy. It gave him purpose. Then, one day, he received a strange request. A man asked him to write a piece of music for a funeral, a requiem. The man wore dark clothes and did not give his name. Mozart was curious, but also worried. He began to work on the music, and something felt different. He told Constanza, "I feel like I'm writing this requiem for myself." He continued writing even though he was growing sicker. He worked while lying in bed. Friends came to visit and helped write down the notes as he spoke them. He sang the parts aloud, full of feeling, but he could not finish it. On December 5, 1791, Mozart died in Vienna. He was only 35 years old. He died with music in his mind and love in his heart. His students finished the requiem, using the notes he had already written. When it was played, people cried. The music was full of emotion. It felt like a goodbye from someone who had given his whole life to art. He was buried in a simple grave. There was no big ceremony. His family was too poor to give him a royal funeral. But over time, people began to understand his greatness. More and more people played his music. His name became known across the world. Vocabulary words for this part. Composer, a person who writes music. Success, reaching a goal or doing something well. Problem, something that is difficult and needs to be solved. Sentence structure focus. Even though blank, he or she blank. Example, even though he was tired, he continued to write music.
After Mozart's death, the world slowly began to realize what it had lost. His music lived on, played in homes, churches, and theaters across Europe. People who had once ignored him now called him a genius. Others began to study his work, trying to understand how someone so young could create music so deep, so full of life. Constanze, his wife, worked hard to share his music with the world. Even though she was a widow with little money, she organized concerts and helped publish his music. She also told people about Mozart's life, making sure others would remember him not just as a composer, but as a husband, a father, and a kind man. Her work helped keep his memory alive. Mozart's music began to grow in popularity. More and more people wanted to play it. Young musicians studied his symphonies, his operas, and his concertos. They felt inspired. His music was not just beautiful, it was also full of feeling, happy, sad, funny, and serious. It showed life in all its colors. For many people, it helped them feel understood. Even today, more than 200 years later, people around the world still listen to Mozart. His music plays in concert halls, in movies, in schools, and even in cartoons. Babies listen to it, adults enjoy it, musicians study it, teachers use it to help children learn. Some scientists even believe that listening to Mozart can help the brain work better. But Mozart's story is not only about music, it's about never giving up. As a child, he amazed people. As a young man, he followed his heart, even when it was difficult. He chose to be free, to take risks, and to speak through his music. He worked hard, loved deeply, and stayed true to himself, even in times of pain. His life was short, but his message is strong. Talent is a gift, but passion and hard work make it grow. Mozart faced many challenges: sickness, money problems, unfair treatment, but he continued. He wrote music until his last breath. Today, when we hear his music, we don't just hear notes, we hear a story. The story of a boy who wrote before he could write. The story of a man who believed music was for everyone. The story of someone who spoke through sound and touched the hearts of millions. Mozart once said, "I pay no attention whatever to anybody's praise or blame. I simply follow my own feelings." His courage to follow his heart is what made him great. He reminds us that it's okay to be different, to think in new ways, and to dream big. His life is a lesson for all of us, that no matter where we come from or what problems we face, we can do something great if we believe in ourselves, stay curious, and work with love. Vocabulary words for this part. Genius, a person with great natural ability, especially in art or science. Inspire, to give someone the desire or feeling to do something. Message, the main idea or lesson in a story, speech, or piece of work. Sentence structure focus. His story is not only about blank, it's also about blank. Example, his story is not only about music, it's also about courage and hard work.
Final summary and discussion. You've just finished listening to the story of Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, a boy who composed music before he could write, and who continued to follow his passion even when life was difficult. Through his story, we learned not only about music, but also about courage, hard work, and staying true to yourself. Let's review the key vocabulary from each part. Talent, natural ability. Practice, to do something again and again to get better. Support, to help or care for someone. Journey, a long trip. Perform, to show a skill in front of people. Royal, related to kings and queens. Freedom, the ability to choose. Admire, to respect or look up to. Improve, to become better. Composer, a person who writes music. Success, reaching a goal. Problem, something difficult that needs a solution. Genius, a person with great ability. Inspire, to give someone ideas or courage. Message, the lesson or idea behind something. We also practiced sentence structures that help learners build fluency. He continued to, even when. Sometimes, but he still. Even though. His story is not only about, it's also about. These patterns are useful for telling stories, expressing contrast, and giving meaning. Now, it's your turn. Discussion question. If you could meet Mozart today, what question would you ask him? Try to answer in 3 to 5 simple English sentences. Use some of the words and sentence structures you've learned. Keep listening, keep learning, and remember, your story matters too. Thank you for listening.